What's up? Hey, hello, everyone. Wow. So today we are back going to be talking about Survivor Season 41, Episode 11. And we only have two more episodes left this season, which is insane. So my name is Rachel.
I'm Alyssa, and it really is insane that there's only two episodes left. I always forget because there's six people left right now, and it's like, oh, it should take three more episodes to get rid of three more people, but no, they always get rid of a lot of people in the finale. So it's gonna be
Speaking
a
of,
fun and exciting time.
Speaking of getting rid of people, Alyssa, today we're going to have three boxes and you're going to choose one. And if you choose the one with the skull and you don't pick the correct one, we're kicking you off of the podcast.
Who is we? Just you, yourself, and you?
Yeah,
Because
your sister will become the new co-host. It'll be Rachel
Rachel and
and
Rachel.
yes, Alyssa's sister also named Rachel.
Which gets very confusing when I'm telling my mom that I talk to Rachel because sometimes I mean that I'm talking to you, and really she thinks I'm talking about my sister. But, anyways, that was a slight tangent. But this episode, I feel like, was a really good episode despite having a really bad twist. So,
Is that like the story of this season? I don't know. I feel like we've
I
just
feel like
keep
it
on getting
is.
these twists over and over again, like splitting at final 10, the hourglass twist. Now this, where you can literally go home by a game of chance, which when we talk about the twist, I don't necessarily like that.
Yeah, yeah. We will definitely be spending a lot of time in this podcast talking about the twist, but first we have to talk about everything leading up to it, starting with the fallout from this past tribal council where Shan was voted out. Obviously, there are some feelings here.
Yeah, so we see Deshaun is mad about being called a snake at the last tribal council, which I'm glad that they brought up again because I feel like at the end of last episode, we were talking on the podcast like, oh, this is interesting. Will there be fallout from this? Will people feel a sort of way about Shan's final words? And so I feel like Deshaun being mad about being called a snake when no one else was called out. Ricard wasn't called out. Danny wasn't called out. Who all these three people were working with Shan, they didn't get called out like Deshaun did. I felt like his anger towards that situation is warranted. And it's interesting because in this segment, we see Deshaun being called emotional by Ricard in confessionals, which is interesting because in the exit interviews, they're doing word associations. And for some of Deshaun's word associations from the voted out players, they've been calling him emotional and a baby. So it's interesting that we saw that some this episode rather than just like, why are people calling him this in the exit interviews?
Yeah, and I think it's really interesting because we weren't sure whether or not the snake comment would have an effect on this vote, but it totally did because Deshaun was almost immediately a target. I feel like he was going to be one of the targets, and Ricard was going to be the other target. So I feel like it's one of those things where maybe you can argue that it didn't really matter, but also it seemed to really matter. So
I think his anger towards the situation is warranted. It's like if you were in his shoes there, you'd be a little bit pissed off about having someone call you a snake in front of everyone in the game still and on the jury. And I feel like the emotion from being blamed for voting Shan out is like growing and bubbling inside of Deshaun. And that's sort of what we see come to fruition later at this tribal council, where he's talking about the emotional burden and the baggage coming into the game as a Black contestant. So it definitely is an interesting story arc that we see weaved in last episode coming into this episode. And it's also interesting because Deshaun is starting to get some, I guess you could say, like negative content being called emotional. Why is he so emotional? So I wonder if that is not good for his winner chances or not.
yeah, I feel like generally we haven't gotten a lot of positive Deshaun content. Like I feel like a lot of it is neutral to negative. So
You
I feel like that
follow Edgic,
definitely.
right?
Yeah, I do follow Edgic, and I can't remember what people are saying about Deshaun, but I feel like he is not anyone's top winner pick from what I have seen. So
Yeah,
Yeah.
so it's interesting that we're seeing those word associations play out now, sort of in the edit more so. Also, from the fallout from last episode, we see a new alliance starting to form of the people who were on the sort of bottom pre last tribal council, and now they're in the majority with Ricard, Xander, Heather, and Erica. Xander had a lot of confessionals at the beginning of this episode saying how happy he was about this group of four. He trusts them. This is a final four. And then he even says it's too good to be true. So I was like, oh, is that the kiss of death? Is Xander getting voted out this episode? But like we saw, that did not happen.
Yeah, I feel like also it was kind of strange because Xander was like, I made a move. And I was like, Xander, I don't think that counts as you making a move. But good for you, buddy. Being on the right side of the vote and making a move are not the same thing. But the other person that I was worried about getting the kiss of death was Danny because he had a really touching personal story about his dad and how his dad dying has affected his life and affected like the way that he plays the game of Survivor. And it's like there's no way that Danny is getting so much positive content after being basically invisible and wasn't going home. But I was so pleasantly surprised by the fact that Danny didn't go home tonight, and I just felt like this whole story about like being upset about his dad not being there for them and then getting to like win immunity for his dad and like bring closure to that relationship. It was just such a beautiful story, and I'm so glad that like he had that opportunity.
I 100 million% agreed. I loved this segment that we saw from Danny. It's just such an awesome segment, and we get to learn more about Danny and his relationships and his life. And it's just also so sad and so moving and so powerful. Him talking about like the shame and feeling angry from his dad passing for something that neither of them could have controlled. So yeah, dang, it was just so powerful and so moving, and I'm like, it's cool to see that on television, and it's good for him to have that moment and to have that reflection in photos of his family, his mom, his wife, his child, his dad on the screen for everyone to see rather than just here's Danny talking, but it overlaid with photos from his life. So I thought that was so cool and so touching.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of people have been complaining this season about how like there's too many sob stories, blah blah blah. And I feel like to me, like the reason I watch Survivor is for the players who are playing it, which is part of the reason why twists in general annoy me because like we've been saying, twists take away from the players and their stories. So I feel like having this moment where it was just purely about a player feeling their feelings, that was really great to me.
Yeah, and it was really like relatable to the immunity challenge that comes up later in the episode. And Danny just seems like such a great guy. Everyone, like in the word associations for Deshaun, all the voted out players for Danny said so much positive things about him, saying like that he's great, he's so friendly, he's so lovable. And so, since we haven't seen too much of Danny on the show, it seems like he has a heck of a social game. Everyone loves him out there. And so he just seems like such a cool dude, like someone that you would just want to have a chat with because he's so cool.
Yeah. Speaking of Danny and the immunity challenge, though, before we get to the immunity challenge, Jeff explains the newest twist on Survivor called the Do or Die Twist. And basically, what the Do or Die Twist is when playing the immunity challenge, whoever drops out first of the immunity challenge is has to then compete in a game to see whether or not they're going to be able to stay, whether or not their torch is going to be stuffed. If they lose the game, they can't play an idol, they can't use any advantages, they get sent home. If they win the game, they get immunity, and then we proceed to vote as normal. And because there's such high stakes for being the first person to drop out, anyone can choose to sit out of the immunity challenge and simply not participate in the Do or Die challenge. And so Heather and Liana end up being the ones that sit out, and then everyone else plays the game. And
I think thoughts on this challenge. I'm like, on the rewatch, Jeff does say, okay, if the person survives the game of chance, you are safe. If not, then you get voted out. There's no vote or anything, so you're eliminated. On the first go around, though, Alyssa and I were texting. later on when tribal council came up and we thought, oh, they're going to play a mini game, they're going to do a challenge, it's going to be like a puzzle or something that the first person who dropped has to complete in order to stay in the game. But no, like literally it's just a game of chance and luck, which I personally, I don't know if I'm not a fan of, because it just feels like Survivor production is just Googling different game theory strategies and games like Prisoner's Dilemma, Monty Hall this time. It just felt like too much luck. And I would hate to be Deshaun in this moment and be sent home based off of a stupid game of luck where he picked the wrong box. And I'm sort of mad for Liana. Like, if you were Liana, I'd also be mad and angry because she went home because of other actions and this game of luck. And so I feel like in Liana's shoes, she was just so unlucky this episode. So I don't know. I feel bad for Deshaun and I feel bad for Liana in this situation. It's just too luck based. I would have rather had like a puzzle that the person had to do. If you complete the puzzle fair and square, great. You had to do some strategy and smarts for the puzzle, not just pick a box. Like, I don't know.
I think part of it is also Liana opted out of the do or die twist by sitting out of the immunity challenge. So it's kind of like sucky for her that even after opting out of the twist is still what ends up sending her home. Because if Deshaun had gone home, she would not have gone home, obviously. But then also, because Deshaun gets immunity after the twist, people can't vote Deshaun out as was the original plan. And I feel like for me, that's part of the thing that like annoys me. Like with the do or die twist, you shouldn't get immunity by completing the do or die. Like if people still want to vote you out, they should be able to vote you out still. Because some people on Reddit were saying that, like, oh, maybe Deshaun dropped on purpose because he thought the chances of him being able to get immunity via do or die were higher than the chances of him being able to get immunity via winning the immunity challenge. So that's just some food for thought.
Yeah, it just feels bad for everyone all around to go home because of such like an unlucky thing, similar to Sydney going home right before the merge when she was originally safe and Erica broke the hourglass, similar to Evie in their post-game interviews. They were saying because of the final 10 tribe split vote where they split into two teams of 5 and voted, Evie said that they didn't think that they were going to go home at that moment because of the relationships they were building. Even though they were like on the bottom a little bit, they thought that they had the relationships, if it was a regular final 10, to make it through. So it just really sucks for Liana to be sent home because of a twist, a double twist, because Deshaun really would have sucked if he got sent home because of this as well. So it's like a lose-lose situation all around for everyone.
And I feel like someone in the comments is going to be saying that statistically, Deshaun should have gone home because the game of chance that he participated in was basically a Monty Hall problem where Jeff gives him 3 boxes, he chooses one, Jeff gives him the opportunity to switch after revealing that one of the boxes has a skull. And so statistically, the chance that Deshaun would win if he switched is 66%, and the chance that he would win if he stayed with his original choice is 33%. So he got really lucky with it being that his original choice was safety, and statistically he should have switched, which I'm sure people are sick to death of hearing the Monty Hall problem explained, but I also feel like people would not have liked it if we did not explain it. So statistically, Deshaun should have been the screwed one. It ended up being that Liana was the screwed one. Everything sucks.
Yeah, technically Deshaun should have switched the box. And I took a game theory class. So I'm like, oh, maybe I should go on Survivor now, because if they're all just going to be doing game theory mini games, like that's perfect because that's all production is using as their little games and twists now. And low key, I do wonder if the boxes that they get to choose are rigged. Like, have you ever had those magic toys as a kid where, like if you like push something down, like you can show like, oh, a ball in the box disappears because it has a fake lid or a fake bottom, so you can make the ball disappear in and out of the box even though you're not ever taking the ball out because there's like a fake lid there. I wonder if production maybe wanted the person that lost first in the challenge to eventually be safe, whether it was Deshaun or anyone else. So they have like trick boxes where they can make the person safe because the box, whatever box, if Deshaun switched or not, would have been the correct box based off of a like fake bottom or something like that. Because I'm like, I don't know, if Deshaun went home, would that be a failure of a twist, or would production like that he went home on chance? I don't know.
I don't know. I
Conspiracy
feel like
theories.
I don't understand like what production wants out of some of these twists, because it's like the knowledge is power advantage ended up having no effect whatsoever on the game. Shot in the Dark, which ended this week, only one person played it. It also basically had zero effect on the game. Like, I don't know. It seems like a lot of these twists just take up airtime. So, I don't know.
Like Shot in the Dark, is that another flubbed twist? Because players realize how much their vote matters, and you can't risk your vote because your vote is currency. If you lose your vote, you can't influence the game. You could get voted out in a sticky situation where the numbers are so close. So I don't know. I feel like low key production would want the loser of the challenge to stay in the game because, oh, it's so fun. You saw Deshaun was almost going to go home, but like he made it through because of this amazing game theory problem. Yay.
Yeah, it's just like, I don't know. I feel like it's one of those things where a lot of these twists are better because they did fail. So,
Another issue with the do or die, I don't know. I felt like the whole name of this twist was a little bit insensitive, considering we just saw Danny have a whole segment talking about the passing of his father. And with the pandemic, there's so many people that have lost the lives of like loved ones or family members. And so Jeff and other people kept on saying Deshaun is going to die tonight if Deshaun lives past this, etc. Like, I don't know, it just felt like a little bit insensitive. Like Deshaun isn't actually dying tonight. Emphasis on everyone kept saying die, die, die. Like, it's not Squid Game or anything. He will be going to Ponderosa if he got sent home here.
yeah, I don't know. I feel like they're so inclined to drama that it's like, are you okay? And I feel like it's just this need to make it seem more dramatic than it is. Like how with Erica, they were all like, she turned back time. And it's like, no, she didn't. So I feel like it's just the theatrics of it all. And like you said, I feel like the theatrics definitely got in the way. So,
I think Elimination Station sounds fun. It's got the like alliteration there. Australian Survivor had a similar twist, except if you were voted out at some certain point, then you could be safe by picking the correct urn that had the safety scroll in it, and then you could be like not sent home that episode. So it's called Safety Scroll. So I feel like that has the nice SS alliteration as well. Elimination Station, Safety Scroll, do or die, just I don't know, it's not a good name.
yeah, I feel like because it's a common phrase, they used it, but I don't know. Like, play or stay. Stay to play to stay? I don't know. We can workshop some names and send the ideas to Jeff.
Yeah, not for free though.
Yeah, not for free. CBS pay us.
So we go into this immunity challenge. Like Alyssa said, Heather and Liana sit out. Erica, Deshaun, Ricard, Xander, and Danny are playing. We also have this immunity challenge that we DIY'd, which we just need to film and we can post on the channel. So it'll be interesting to see because in this immunity challenge, we saw people doing the flipping grip strategy where sometimes you do like overhand holding it, sometimes underhand holding it. So Ricard's strategy, he did flipping each time over, under, over for the 3 rounds. Danny did over, over, under for the 3 rounds and then won. So Alyssa, I feel like when we film this DIY, we'll have to test like 5 minutes doing over, under, over, and then like over, over, under, and then see, because what if Danny won because doing over, over, under let his like muscles to do under last longer, because the third round lasted longer than 5 minutes.
Yeah, I feel like that's the main thing. The first 2 rounds, you have a time limit, so you know how long you have to go. And so I feel like it's not as bad to use the same muscles both times. But for the last one, you really want those muscles fresh because they can go on indefinitely. You could also probably argue that Danny has an advantage there just because like he's a stronger guy and so maybe he has more endurance in his arm muscles, but I don't know.
I was actually surprised that Danny, the big NFL player, won this as his first challenge because I feel like, I don't know, maybe grip strength for football, holding a football, so you have like good forearm muscles, but I don't know. I
I
just thought
don't
like
think that holding a football really uses grip strength
for
because
such
it's
a
so
big
big.
dude, I was so surprised like, oh, this is his first immunity win. Like you'd think, oh, he'd be good at other like all the other challenges because he's so athletic.
Yeah, I don't know what's up with that, but Danny wins this immunity challenge into like the tribal council, like before tribal, it was like halfway through the episode and they had started tribal and we were like, oh, this is a super long tribal. This is probably good for Deshaun because it means that like a super long tribal probably means that he does the challenge and then also they have to vote. And we were right. So go us.
So, pre tribal, there are some differing plans. One plan to vote out Liana, the other plan to vote out Ricard, but these are backup plans just in case Deshaun wins the do or die or loses the do or die challenge. And so, for the reasonings to vote Ricard and Liana for Ricard, people are considering to vote him out because he's winning immunities, he's likable, he has made moves, he's a threat to win the game. On the other hand, people are saying they want to vote Liana out because they haven't really worked with her thus far. And so I thought it was interesting, weird that Erica got the role as, hey, Erica's the swing vote this episode, and not grouping in, hey, Heather and Erica are the swing votes together, since we've seen that those two are a tight duo. It was interesting, weird. Like, are they really going to be voting separately? Are Heather and Erica not going to be voting the same way? Would they ever not vote the same way? Not sure. I guess we haven't really seen too much of that relationship, but I thought it was interesting that Erica got the sole thing of, hey, I'm making the decision this time. I'm the swing vote, not Heather and Erica.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of times they want to try and give Erica power that she doesn't really have. So I wonder like what that means about Erica's like chances in the game. Just because it seems like she's getting screen time when she doesn't necessarily like quote unquote need screen time. So that was interesting. I guess we can talk later about how Erica didn't even really end up being the swing vote, but we
Yeah, I
can, yeah.
thought though Erica made the right move this episode to vote with Heather, Ricard, and Xander to vote out Liana, because I feel like premonitioning into the future. Next time, I think Heather and Erica. I was gonna say like Heather. That's their new ship
You
name.
really are just like making up ship names left and right for these people.
People need like alliance names, so we don't need to like say their full names as a duo. But I was gonna do it again. Erica and Heather are, I think, set up nicely to play the middle, and then they can swing back and forth between either voting out Ricard or Deshaun next time. There's like no time left in the game. Literally, we're 2 weeks until the finale, final three. There are so many big targets that you need to vote out that I feel like Erica, even though she was a huge target coming into the merge, and people like Shan and everyone wanted to vote her out, because you still have to vote out Ricard and maybe Deshaun and some Xander even. I think Erica's going to fall through the cracks and maybe not get targeted. And so when you're down to four and you have Erica, Heather, and Xander, it does seem like Xander is going to go with Erica and Heather, whoever is with them at that four. And it does seem like Xander's willing to vote out Ricard. We saw this episode that Erica and Xander were scheming, saying pros and cons, voting out Ricard now versus one more down the line. And Xander wanted to keep Ricard this week because Ricard is a big shield, and he was afraid that if Ricard went, me, Xander, would be the next person on the chopping block. So I do feel like it makes sense because Erica and Heather could easily be the swing votes moving forward to vote out, hey, Ricard needs to go, he's going to win. Whoever's the next target after that, they need to go, they're going to win.
I feel like part of the like problem is Erica, Heather, and Xander were kind of in a lose-lose. Because I feel like Liana, Deshaun, and Danny, despite like there being fractures because Shan was voted out, like they were still all going to vote together. So it's either you end up in a 3-3 against the Black Alliance, or you keep Ricard around for one vote longer than maybe you would like to and risk that he wins immunity again. So I feel like they made the right choice with ending up going with um, Ricard, Xander, Erica, Heather. Like, I feel like that was the right choice for everyone involved. So, yeah.
And I don't feel like it's too late if people are like, WTF, like Erica had a confessional. Oh, viewers at home are going to be screaming at me, hey, you need to get out the big threat of Ricard this week. I think there's still chances to get out Ricard as long as Ricard doesn't go on an immunity run, which could be a major problem because he is quite good at all different kinds of immunities. I said last week, triple threat, good at endurance, good at balance, good at puzzles, good at running up and down kind of thing. So it's like he could easily go on an immunity run and win out. So you need someone to beat him, and then I feel like he would be a prime target whatever time he loses coming in the next few weeks before the final three.
Yeah. So I personally wasn't screaming at Erica to vote out Ricard. I don't know if anyone was really doing that, but.
So we go into tribal council, and there's another super, super powerful segment that we saw with the Black players still left in the game, speaking of their experiences, balancing gameplay and morals, the extra baggage that they're bringing in as Black contestants into this game show that is like a reflection of everyday life, talking about how they want to be role models for other people and especially uplifting other Black people and other Black contestants in the future or in the past Survivor seasons, giving them something to root for. And like we said last week when we had all of those conversations between Deshawn and Shan, speaking about, hey, we're going to do this for the culture versus, hey, $1 million, that's a lot of money for my student debt, for Shan and housing that they were talking about last week. I think this week, Liana is the star of the episode. It was amazing. She's so tired, not eating, being able to put her words together so well while being freaking starved on an island. I think she's the star of this episode. She just said everything that I feel like a lot of people are feeling.
Yeah, and I especially like that Liana reacted to the people who are going to be like, oh, why are you bringing politics into Survivor? Because I feel like that's something that we've experienced a lot, having a podcast about Survivor and talking about the political elements that influence Survivor. It does matter because players come in with this baggage. It's not something that we talk about just because we think that it needs to be talked about, even though it is important. It's something that actually affects people. So I feel like Liana was super articulate. I feel like she spoke in a way that even people who don't have that experience could understand how she was feeling.
I was like, Liana must be on the social medias and Reddit and Facebook because I feel like on previous seasons of Survivor, when the 50% diversity initiative started to pop up online, there were so many people complaining, like, why does this need to be a thing? I just want to watch Survivor for Survivor. Why do we need to keep bringing these conversations into the TV show? And it's like, it's not, these conversations aren't a new thing that's happening. Like, we've seen conversations like this happen on the most recent seasons of Survivor with Island of the Idols, where we had the conversations between Jamal and Jack. I think, right? Jack, about Jack calling Jamal's buff a do-rag. Similarly, other conversations about sexual misconduct, inappropriate touching, sexual assault, abuse. So it's like, I truly believe that these kinds of real life conversations about race, gender, sexual orientation are so important to be shown on the TV because there's so many people who maybe have never met a person of a certain race or a person of a certain sexual identity, and this is their exposure to that. And I'm glad that Survivor had this conversation in and they didn't just delete it or not show it on TV, because it is such an important topic and something that can be a big learning moment and conversation starter for a lot of viewers.
I feel like the only thing that I disliked about this conversation was the fact that they talked to the black players and they talked to the white players, but they didn't talk to the other players of color who are on the cast. So they didn't talk to Erica and Ricard. And I guess like the charitable way of looking at this is that they wanted to center specifically the black experience, or they didn't want to like muddy the waters by talking about the experiences of other people of color. But I feel like one of the things that like America specifically is really bad at is looking at diversity specifically as more black faces. And like, yeah, it's wonderful that we got a lot of black cast members this season. Like Liana said, it's really important that we got to see like a wide range of black people. We got to see more than just like one stereotype. But I feel like it's also important to see a wide range of other people. It's important to see a wide range of Asian American people. It's important to see a wide range of Latina people. Like, it's important to see more than just black people and white people. And I feel like it was frustrating to see Erica and Ricard's voices like not a part of this conversation, because they should be a part of a conversation on diversity as well.
And hopefully Jeff like allowed them to talk, asked them questions, and I don't know. Yeah, it was just sort of weird like that Xander and Heather's answers got shown, because hopefully everyone on the cast got to say something at this point. And so we got to see the allyship from Xander and Heather. Like, I feel like for other people of color, non-black POC people, like it is important. It would have been very interesting to see either Erica or Ricard give a comment there, maybe cut one of Xander or Heather's comments to give one to Erica or Ricard, because like as other POCs, it's important that POC people stick together and they be allies for other POC groups. I feel like that's important for people and viewers to hear the perspective of, because I feel like there's so much conversation and talk on like the Survivor Reddit and other places online where people are trying to pit different minority races against one another. And I feel like if that kind of conversation isn't being shown on TV, where like yes, like as a different POC, I am still a supportive and an ally of the black contestants on this cast, I think that is so important to hear as well, because there's just so much nonsense online of people saying like just pitting all of the races against each other, and it's like we don't need that. So I feel like it would have been interesting to hear like, oh, as a POC person, I'm an ally as well, and not just having white allyship being shown.
Yeah, because I feel like one of the things that people in the social justice world talk a lot about is about how allyship is like a continuing process, and we all have to be allies to each other in like
Mm-hmm.
different ways. And so it's like black people have to be allies to Asian American peoples. Asian American peoples have to be allies to the queer community. The queer community has to be allies to the Latin community. Like, it's not something where like we can just choose to like stay within our own groups or stay within groups that like we think deserve rights. Like, all rights for all people is like something that is said a lot in social justice circles. So I wish that had been, or all the power to all the people. That's what it is. So I wish that had been more present in this tribal council. But then again, maybe that was like too too much for the typical Survivor viewer.
Maybe I'm like, there's just so much negativity online surrounding these kinds of conversations, especially in the Survivor community, especially in the Big Brother community over the summer, having the Cookout Alliance make history in Big Brother. There's just so much negativity around that. So I feel like having this segment, having it aired is just so, so, so powerful, especially for those people online that are like, why does this need to be a thing? Like Liana was saying, and for the people online that are just disliking of like people of color having opportunities in the game like this. And it's like that is why these kinds of conversations need to be shown, because people, viewers, don't understand. And I think this is such a good conversation starter, and it's a good learning opportunity for a lot of people.
Yeah, so it's just, yeah, it was a good conversation. I could see ways that the conversation could have been even more impactful, but I'm still glad that it happened. And I guess I kind of saw that as like building up to Deshaun being voted out, because like he got to talk a lot about like his experience. But it turns out it was building up to Liana being voted out because Deshaun went through the twist, he won the game, and they got to a regular vote.
So, Liana not playing the shot in the dark, it sort of makes sense if she believes that Erica is voting with her, maybe Heather is voting with her. And so, with the whole shot in the dark, is it a flub? Is it not a flub? It's like if Liana did play shot in the dark and she lost her vote, and potentially that was like one of the deciding votes, then they may not have had the numbers. People didn't know that Xander was going to be playing an extra vote to give their side some even more oomph to get some votes across the line. So if Liana did think she truly had Erica and maybe Heather voting with her, like to play the shot in the dark in that case could have been detrimental, and maybe she wouldn't have had enough votes to make it through.
Yeah. And earlier I mentioned that Erica didn't actually end up being the swing vote, and that was because Xander played his extra vote this time, and he put an extra vote on Liana's name. And so it ended up that Erica's choice still probably would have mattered, because then when there was a revote, she would have had to choose whether or not Liana was worth going to Rocks for. But I thought it was interesting because that kind of takes the power out of Erica's vote this time. And then also, Ricard definitely noticed that Liana had an extra vote beyond what she should have. And I'm curious if like other people also noticed that there were 8 votes when there should have been 7.
So I guess it's interesting, did Xander and Ricard plan that, hey, Xander's going to use the extra vote this time? Or was it Xander, hey, finally using one of my advantages because he didn't want to use it on Evie, didn't want to use it on Tiffany? So low key here, he's using it for himself technically, because we heard him say, "Oh, I don't want Ricard to go because I think I'm going to be the next target." So he played the extra vote to ensure, hopefully, that Liana goes in his mind, so that Ricard stays and is that target in front of him. So I do wonder, was it a plan that people talked about? Hey, Xander, use your extra vote just in case, because Erica is being sketchy, she might flip. Or was it Xander, I'm playing my own selfish game, I want Ricard to stay. I'm going to use this against, like, for him because I want him here for my own being a shield.
Based on the one nonverbal reaction that we got from Ricard, I'm inclined to believe that it wasn't a pre-discussed thing, because the reaction shot we saw of Ricard was Ricard going, huh? And so I feel like if it had been like a planned thing, Ricard wouldn't have looked like confused at the fact that there were 8 votes instead of 7. So
yeah, maybe Ricard's great at acting too. Another thing to add to his triple threat status. He's just good at everything.
Next he's going to be good at singing and dancing, and then he'll
I
be a
think
real
he's a
triple
dancer.
threat.
That's how he won the foot challenge. That's what Sydney said.
Well, Ricard, I love you. That's all. But
a man of many talents.
Yes. But so this episode ended up with Liana going home. Shan looked like she was about to cry. I felt really bad for her. But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting to see how the game moves forward. It's going to be interesting to see if Danny and Deshaun stick together now that the Black Alliance like really isn't a thing anymore. I have a feeling Ricard is definitely going to be targeted again, but we'll have to see.
I agree. If you haven't seen the Ponderosa of Liana, definitely go and check that out. It was very, very cute and heartwarming, but also, like we said, feels bad that Liana got sent home because of a double twist, which sort of is very unlucky for her.
Yeah. So let us know in the comments down below what you thought of this episode. Let us know what you thought of Liana going home, of the do or die twist, what you think is going to happen next week, or anything else that you would like to share. And we will see you guys next week for Survivor's penultimate episode.